After publishing 100 episodes of the Tech and Love podcast, I believe it's time for me to quit podcasting. I know, it's sad. And before I go, I want to share with you all the top 3 career advice that people learn late in their life. And that's because I've interviewed a lot of tech entrepreneurs, a lot of tech workers, creatives, engineers, VPs. And I'm like, I want to share the amazing advice that they've given me on this podcast. And I hope that it helps you in your career as much as it has helped me in my career. So let's jump right into it. Welcome to the Tech Unlock podcast, where we demystify emerging technologies and give you the keys to unlock your successful tech career. I'm your host, Grace McJones. Let's unlock the future together. Did you know that 90% of podcasts don't make it past episode 3? People literally quit after the 3rd episode. And in order to be ranked as the top 1% of podcasts in the world, you only need to publish 21 episodes. 21 episodes! Y'all, I'm glad to say I'm now part of the top 1% of podcasts in the world. Yes, we can cheer. We can cheer. And we were at 100 episodes. 100 episodes. Obviously, this episode's not going to be about podcasting, but I probably might do one in the future. I just wanted to share the top 3 career lessons that I've learned through the podcast that has brought so much value to my life that I didn't have to learn late in life or late in my career because I had this podcast for 5 years now. Yes, almost 5 years now. And so getting right into it, in every episode that I have interviewed someone, I always ask them this question: what is the best career advice you've ever received? Now, I've gotten a lot of different responses. Obviously, everyone's lived experience is different. But if I could summarize the tips that everyone has shared or their career advice that they have shared, it probably can be summed up in these 3 points. And the last point is very confusing, but the most critical out of the 3 that I'm going to share with you today. So, the first lesson or the first tip that a lot of people have shared with me on this podcast, and I deeply resonate with, is not making your job your sole identity. Not making your job your sole identity or what you do your sole identity. And there's so many reasons to this. But the biggest one is that when you make your job or what you do your sole identity, or the biggest part of your identity when you get laid off, or maybe have to do a career switch or do something different, part of your identity or the confidence that you have is taken away. And I've seen that a lot in this season where we're seeing a lot of layoffs or people not even being able to get a job in this economy, and they feel very defeated. They feel like, oh my gosh, who am I without this title? Who am I without this, company in my resume? Like, who am I without having this level of success? And granted, while what we do is very, very, very important in the way we see ourselves and the way that people see us, if this is the only thing that you have, then you're going to be crushed when things change. And so the biggest thing that I've learned and people have shared on this podcast is that make sure that you have things outside of your job that grounds your identity, right? Either that's your love for, community, or your love for your family, your love for your friends, or being able to prioritize your health, and being able to have hobbies that bring you joy and bring you hope, because those things, yes, are also always changing, but those things are within your control. The amount of time you spend with your family should be within your control. The amount of time that you give to, improving your health and your body and your mobility should be within your control. When it comes to a job, it's here today, it's gone tomorrow, and that's why you can't let your identity be built on it solely. So, if you're watching this right now, if you're listening and you feel like your job is your whole personality, time for you to switch it up. Time for you to switch it up, because you don't want to live your life and all that people know about you is your job and your job title. And if that goes away, you're no longer relevant to anybody else because you never grew relationships that were deeper than just what you do. All right, so moving on to lesson number 2. There's a quote that says, it's not what you know, but who you know that really matters when it comes to moving or growing within your career. That is true. But what is more true today than ever before is not about who you know, but how you know those people. For example, if you know Jimmy when you were in high school and haven't talked to Jimmy since then, it's kind of awkward if you reach out to Jimmy and be like, hey, we're in the same English class in high school. Can you refer me to a job? There are some people that would do that, some people who are weird and haven't really thought through that. But Jimmy has no obligation to refer you to a new job or to help you out just because you went to high school together. Now, if you have built a relationship, let's say you were part of the same soccer team or volunteered together and he knows about your work ethic, blah, 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 then that matters. Context matters. And so it's important for you to build your community before you need it. Obviously, there's no secret that most people in tech are introverts, and that's including me. I'm an introvert, true and true. And so, networking or building community can feel very tricky because you're like, I don't like talking to people. I don't know what to say. I don't want to go out. But let me tell you something, those excuses in 2025, it doesn't count. They don't matter. No one's buying that because we live in a network driven society where even if you're lacking certain skills or certain credentials, knowing the right people and building with the right people can take you further than having a master's or PhD or going to the best universities. And so it's important to learn this lesson earlier on, meaning that it's not just about who you know, but the context matters. And so if you're not building and connecting with people through community, then you're doing yourself a disservice. And this is not saying that things have to be transactional, right? Where it's like, oh, I'm going to get into this community so I can meet, other professionals that can help me in the long run. Yeah, people can smell that. They can smell when someone's trying to use them or just trying to make it transactional. Are there situations where things are transactional? Yes, of course. But it's much better to invest in your relationships and invest in people that you really care about than just trying to network so you can climb the career ladder. The third lesson people learn too late in their career and honestly in their life in general is that they follow their passion and not their curiosity. Now, like I said earlier, this is very confusing. A lot of people are like, wait, what do you mean? What if I have multiple passions? Or what if, I love what I do? Like, does that mean I'm doing something wrong? No, it doesn't. But at the end of the day, when you follow your curiosity, you're able to move through life with intention and you don't rely on motivation or ambition. And I'm just going to share my story to help you understand where I'm coming from. Growing up, I was never passionate about podcasting. I didn't even know what podcasting was when I first started. I wasn't passionate about, computer science, about coding. I just leaned towards my curiosity. I was like, oh, I'm curious about this. What would it take for me to start a podcast that is tech driven, focused on career development and emerging technologies? And I remember when I first started, I looked on the charts and I didn't see a lot of women in the podcast industry, especially when it comes to tech. And even still today, there is not that many. And so there is no ambition of me to be like, oh man, I want to do this so that I can make X amount of money. Or I want to do this so that I can show that I have this skill. I was just curious. I'm like, what would happen if I took the questions that I have when it came to tech or growing my career? Because I started the podcast at the same time I started my career. So there's so much I didn't know. And I'm like, okay, I need to learn what I need to learn. I need to learn ASAP. I can't be sitting around, acting like I know what I know. I'm not going to sit around, thinking about imposter syndrome. It's like, no, I'm going to do something about it. And I knew that I wasn't the only person that had those questions. And so instead of trying to act like a know-it-all, I remember people would send me questions on LinkedIn like, oh, what does it feel like, working at Microsoft? How did you start your journey? And I'm like, wow, like if one person has this question, there's probably multiple people. And so I'm like, instead of doing the one off of answering it in DMs, let me create a podcast because I also have questions from other people who are doing things differently than I am, who are way ahead of me. And so instead of selfishly just asking them those questions or answering questions from a one to one ratio, I can do a one to many. And so that's what led me to begin this podcast. So, like I said, I wasn't passionate about podcasting, coding, or working in big tech. I was just curious. Curiosity led me to studying computer science, majoring in computer science, and minoring in cybersecurity, being the first in my family to graduate college in the US, being the first person in my family to make six figures, being the first person in my family to do so many other things. And passion had nothing to do with it. And that's what people don't understand is that if you wait till you're passionate to do something, or if you wait till you have the motivation, the ambition, you're never going to do it. You're never going to succeed. And so if you're like, you've had this recurring thought of like, what would happen if you did XYZ, right? And this is in a way of helping people, obviously not harming people. What would happen if you started that blog? What would happen if you actually applied to that company? What would happen if you actually went back to school and get your degree? What would happen if you started that business? Curiosity starts as a question and it leads you to show up when you have no motivation. Like I said, it took me 5 years to do 100 episodes. I could have been more consistent, y'all. I know I could have been more consistent, but I was like, as long as I don't give up and I keep showing up for myself and I keep showing up for my community, that's all that matters. I wasn't trying to be ambitious and saying, oh, I have to reach 100 episodes in 1 year. There's some people who do that. Hey, kudos to you. Okay, good job. But that was not for me. I'm like, I'm going to go at my own pace. I'm not going to compare myself to other people. I'm going to make sure that I am learning alongside my community and sharing the most relevant information when it comes to tech and helping them grow their careers. And that's what made me get here, not anything else. Obviously, everyone has different goals and they have different ambitions. Not saying that that's wrong, but if you're looking for a sustainable way to continually showing up for yourself, showing up for your career and those around you, then you want to lean towards your curiosity. If you have multiple ideas of what you want to do, or you're in a season of switching your career path, just really sit down and write the 5 things right now that you're most curious about. Like, are you curious about becoming a writer, right? Are you curious about, taking a step back from your job so that you can improve your mental health and your physical health? Write it down because that can save your life. So, in summary, number one, don't make your job your identity. If you do, you're cooked. That's all I have to say. Number two, build your community before you need it. Context matters with how you know people and how you build with them. And number three, don't follow your passion, follow your curiosity. But at the end of the day, you have to make sure that you go where you feel like it's sustainable. Sometimes your passion, you want to reserve that for you to make sure that you're doing things that you love and they are not monetizing. Like a lot of people are like, oh yeah, monetize your passion. It's like you don't have to monetize everything you love. You don't have to monetize everything you love. You don't have to monetize everything that you're into or that brings you joy. Sometimes you can just show up and enjoy it. And I honestly, that's what it felt like with this podcast. I'm like, I'm just gonna show up, learn, educate others, not trying to monetize, and see what happens. And so being a lifelong learner, I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna keep on going and make sure that I and being true to who I am. And I think that has paid off tremendously for me. And I hope that it pays off for you also. Lastly, on the topic of curiosity, I want to share this quote with you guys by Elizabeth Gilbert, who is an amazing author. And the way she talks about having curiosity to have a creative life. This is something that she said that has resonated with me for a long time that I feel like you all need to know.
And I say curiosity more than passion because I think we live in a passion fetishizing society where people are constantly being given this often very unhelpful piece of advice, which is follow your passion, follow your passion, follow your passion, which is all well and good if you happen to have one. But many of us don't, or are between passions, or have multiple things that we're interested in, or don't recognize ourselves in that line, or can't access our passion some random Thursday morning when we didn't sleep well the night before and things aren't going very well, right? Here's what you can always access: your curiosity.
I am willing to die on this hill. Go with your curiosity. Go where you feel like, oh man, I can't get this thought out of my head. Like I feel like I need to start this business to help people, or I need to, teach in this place, or I need to, um, get a different job, or move to a different state or a different country. Is it going to be easy? Nope. Will you face some challenges? Probably. But at the end of the day, when you look back on your life, at least you don't have regret, right? I always say it's better to have fail forward, than to live with regret. And so those are the top three lessons that I wanted to share with you all today. There's so many more that I could talk about, but those are the three that has made a profound effect on my life and my career that I'm so grateful that I was able to learn early in my career and all through my journey, right now working within the tech industry. So, like I mentioned earlier, I am quitting podcasting. Well, not podcasting entirely, basically how I run this podcast because it's been a one woman show for the past few years, and your girl is tired. I am tired. I am burnt out. I'm not even gonna lie. And so, I'm changing how I produce this podcast, and we're moving more to a video focused podcast. If you're new here, you've probably found us through YouTube. I started posting more consistently this year. I think we're at 500 subscribers. Yay! It is hard out here. I'm not gonna lie. It is hard doing long form content on YouTube, but I hope that you all follow me in my journey, and hopefully I can create another video when I hit 200 episodes and see where we land. But I am grateful for all the support, all the comments. I read all the comments, and then just all the awesome feedback. I feel like there's always something to improve on. And so if there's a topic that you want me to cover on the podcast, let me know. I am going to focus more on career development and emerging technologies when it comes to robotics, AI, quantum computing, because those are things honestly that I am curious about, and so I'm going to follow that also. But I hope that we're able to learn and grow on this journey together. And also, if you're a podcast producer, writer, editor, I am hiring, so definitely hit me up. I will put the email of the podcast in the show notes or in the description. But thank you so much for being here and listening and commenting. It really does mean the world to me. So that's pretty much it for episode 100. And yeah, I'll catch you on the next episode. Until then, stay curious and see you next time.